You know how Steve Jobs walked out on stage in 2007 and held up that first iPhone? That moment literally changed the world. But here's the thing. He wasn't just showing off a gadget. He was persuading millions of people that they needed it, even before they knew why. And that's what I want to talk about today. Persuasion. Now don't roll your eyes just yet. I'm not talking about sleazy tricks or some kind of hypnosis. I'm talking about the little shortcuts in our brains. The stuff companies, politicians, and even your friend who always gets their way, use all the time. Here's the crazy part. Most of us think we're making our own choices. But a lot of the time, we're just following these invisible nudges without even realizing it. So, in this video I'm going to break down a few of those persuasion triggers. And once you see them, you'll start noticing them everywhere. In ads, in conversations, even in your own decisions. And hey, quick disclaimer before we dive in. This isn't about using persuasion to trick or harm people, because sure you can use it that way, but that stuff never lasts. The real power is using persuasion for good, like building better relationships, growing your business, or just getting people to actually listen when you talk. So, the big question is, how can we protect ourselves from being influenced blindly, and at the same time, use persuasion as a superpower in our own lives? Well, in today's video, that's exactly what I'm going to show you. Hello, you're watching Metanoia, where we bring you simple but powerful insights from psychology to help you shape your habits, decisions, and identity, so you can create real, lasting transformation. And today we're diving into the art of persuasion, inspired by Robert Cialdini's classic work, Influence. In this video, I'll give you simple ways to actually use persuasion in your daily life, without manipulation, without guilt, so you can communicate better, win trust faster, and build the kind of influence that lasts. Let me start with a story. You remember that whole Popeye's chicken sandwich craze a few years ago? People were lining up for hours, stores were selling out, fights were breaking out in parking lots, it was wild. Now here's the funny part. Yes, the sandwich was good, but what really drove people crazy wasn't just the flavor. It was the feeling that there weren't enough to go around. That get it before it's gone rush. That's the first principle of persuasion. Scarcity. When something feels rare, our brains light up like it's treasure. It's built into us. Way back in the day, if you didn't grab food or water when it was available, you might not get another chance. So even today, when a company says, limited edition sneakers or only a few hours left on this deal, that ancient survival switch still flips on. Suddenly it doesn't even matter if we really want the thing, we just don't want to miss out. And companies know this. Black Friday sales, Nike drops, Amazon countdown timers, they all create that same FOMO, making us act fast, sometimes faster than we should. So here's the thing, you can use this too. If you're trying to sell something or even just trying to get people's attention, make it clear it won't be around forever. Set a deadline, offer limited spots, make it feel exclusive. People value what feels rare. But you've got to watch out when you're on the other side. The next time you're about to click buy because there's a clock ticking down, ask yourself, do I really want this? Or am I just scared of missing out? That one question can save you a lot of regret purchases. And speaking of influence, sometimes it's not about the product at all. Sometimes it's about who is asking. That's where the next persuasion trigger comes in. You ever notice how sometimes you'll buy something just because you like the person selling it? Like, think about celebrity endorsements. Michael Jordan didn't just sell sneakers, he practically built the entire Nike empire. People didn't just want basketball shoes, they wanted a piece of MJ. If Jordan wore them, suddenly they weren't just shoes. They were status, coolness, confidence, all rolled into one. That's the power of the next principle of influence, liking. We're more likely to say yes to people we like, trust, or simply feel connected to. And it's not just about celebrities. It can be your favorite YouTuber, your neighbor, or even that super friendly salesperson who makes you feel like you've known them forever. Sometimes we're not really buying the product, we're buying the person. Marketers use this all the time. Influencers build entire careers on it. They make you feel like a friend, like you're part of their circle. So when they recommend a brand of skincare or the latest gadget, you don't even pause to question it. It feels like advice, not advertising. But here's the flip side. That warm, friendly feeling, it can cloud your judgment. Just because you like someone doesn't mean everything they promote is good for you. So the trick is to pause and ask yourself, Would I buy this if it wasn't coming from them? And if you're on the other side, if you're the one trying to persuade, it's a reminder that people don't just buy products, they buy people. So the more genuine, relatable, and likable you are, the easier it is to build influence without even trying. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Sometimes it doesn't matter whether we like the person at all. If we see them as an expert, we just follow along. That's the next trigger. You know what's funny? We don't always need proof to believe someone, we just assume they know better, based on how they carry themselves. Like, put a person in a white lab coat and suddenly their words feel 10 times more official than if your neighbor said the same thing. Back in the 1960s, there was this wild psychology experiment by Stanley Milgram. Volunteers were told to give electric shocks to another person every time they got an answer wrong. Now the person getting shocked was just an actor, but the volunteers didn't know that. Here's the crazy part. Many of them kept going even when it seemed dangerous just because a man in a lab coat calmly told them to continue. That's the power of authority. A coat, a title, and a confident tone can push ordinary people to do things they'd normally never imagine. And it's not just experiments. We see it all the time. Think about when Oprah added a book to her club. Suddenly that book was everywhere, flying off shelves. Or when LeBron James puts his name on sneakers, they sell out in hours. We're not just buying a book or a shoe. We're buying into the trust and authority we place in them. That brings us to the next important principle of influence: authority. Marketers understand this really well. That's why ads love to say 9 out of 10 dentists recommend this toothpaste, or why financial apps feature someone in a suit explaining how to grow your wealth. It's not just the product, it's the authority behind the message that convinces us. And sometimes, it's not even real authority. It just looks like it. A lab coat, a title, a fancy backdrop. It tricks our brains into thinking, yep, this person knows what they're talking about. But here's the thing, authority cuts both ways. It can guide us to smart choices, or blind us into following the wrong ones. Which is why it's worth pausing sometimes and asking, is this person really an expert, or are they just playing the part? But here's something fascinating. While authority can push us to say yes, there's another force that can lock us in once we've already said it. It's like once we've made a small choice, we feel this invisible pressure to keep going, to stay in line with it, even if the stakes get higher later. Sounds familiar, right? Let's talk about that next. You know what's funny? Our brains hate being inconsistent. We'll often go out of our way to stick to something we've already said or done, even if it doesn't fully make sense. There's this classic experiment from the 1960s that really proves it. Researchers first asked homeowners to put a tiny sticker in their window that said, "Be a safe driver." A harmless little request. Almost everyone agreed. But here's the twist. 2 weeks later they came back with a much bigger ask. Would those same people put a giant, ugly billboard in their front yard with the same message? Normally almost nobody says yes to something that disruptive. But in this study, the people who had agreed to the small sticker were 4 times more likely to agree to the billboard, just because they wanted to stay consistent with their first yes. Another similar study showed the same pattern. Volunteers were asked to wear a small badge supporting a social cause. That's it, just a badge. But a couple of weeks later, when they were asked to actually donate money for the cause, the ones who had worn the badge were significantly more likely to contribute. Again, the logic was simple. I've already shown support, so I should follow through. This brings us to the next powerful principle of influence: commitment and consistency. Once we make a small commitment, we feel a strong pull to behave in ways that align with it, even if it's inconvenient or costly. And you see this everywhere in daily life. For example, ever noticed how someone who proudly declares, "I'm starting the gym this Monday," suddenly feels extra pressure to show up because they don't want to break their word? Or how loyalty cards work at coffee shops? The moment you've collected a couple of stamps, you feel an urge to keep going until the card is full, even if you weren't a daily coffee drinker before. And so even public pledges, like announcing a goal on social media, make people more likely to follow through. Why? Because staying consistent feels good, while breaking it feels uncomfortable. That's the power of the next principle of influence: consistency. A small yes today often leads to a much bigger yes tomorrow. And speaking of yes, in the next section, we'll see a principle of influence that doesn't just rely on your choices, but on what everyone else around you is doing. One of my favorite stories about human behavior comes from the 1960s. Psychologists staged a little experiment on the streets of New York. They had a man stand on the sidewalk looking up at an empty sky. At first, people just walked past him. But then, when a small group joined him and started looking up too, suddenly dozens of passers-by stopped, tilted their heads, and stared at the sky. They didn't know why, but if everyone else was looking up, well, there must be something worth seeing, right? And that's the thing. We humans are wired to copy the crowd. We often decide what's right by seeing what other people are doing. This is why laugh tracks were so popular in old sitcoms. If the TV audience is laughing, you feel like you should laugh too. This brings us to the next powerful principle of influence: social proof. In simple terms, social proof means we look to others to guide our own actions, especially when we're uncertain. Think about it. If you're choosing a restaurant in a new city, would you rather walk into the empty one, or the one with a line outside? Chances are, you'll pick the busy one. Not because you know the food is better, but because other people seem to think so. Everyday life is full of this. We check online reviews before buying something. We're more likely to subscribe to a YouTube channel if we see it already has thousands of subscribers. Even in fashion, trends catch on, not because each of us independently decides they look good, but because we see others wearing them and think, well, if everyone else is into it, maybe I should be too. And here's where it gets interesting. Marketers, leaders, and even everyday people use this principle all the time. That bestseller tag on Amazon, it's a social proof. Testimonials on a website, they are also a social proof. Even the phrase, most people choose this option, is a nudge in the same direction. Now here's the question. If we follow others so naturally, what happens when someone gives us something first? Some small favor or gift? Do we feel compelled to give something back? That, my friend, takes us into the next powerful principle of influence. Let's check that. One of the most fascinating examples of human behavior comes from an experiment in restaurants. Researchers found that when waiters gave customers a small piece of candy with their bill, the tips went up. And when they gave 2 candies, the tips nearly doubled. Even more interesting, if the waiter gave 1 candy, started to walk away, then turned back and offered a second one as if it were extra, tips skyrocketed. Why? Because the customers felt they'd been given a little gift, and they wanted to return the favor. This brings us to the next powerful principle of influence: reciprocity. It's simple. We feel an obligation to give back when we receive something. You've probably experienced this yourself. Ever gotten a free sample at a store? Suddenly you feel more inclined to buy the full product, even if you weren't planning to. Or maybe a friend helps you move into your new apartment, and without thinking, you feel you owe them one when they need help later. Everyday life is full of this. Think about invitations. You go to someone's wedding, and when it's your turn, you naturally feel like you should invite them to yours. Or gifts. Someone gives you a thoughtful birthday present, and you make sure to give them something equally nice in return. Reciprocity is powerful because it doesn't rely on logic, it's almost automatic. We don't like feeling indebted, so we balance the scales. And with that, we've now explored how people are influenced by scarcity, liking, authority, consistency, social proof, and reciprocity. In other words, the 6 timeless principles of persuasion. So, let's bring it all together and see how these principles play out in everyday decisions, and how we can become more aware when they're being used on us. We started this journey with a simple idea, that human behavior isn't random, it follows patterns. It can be guided, nudged, influenced. Think back. Remember the free coffee that made you feel like giving back? That was reciprocity. The small step that pulled you deeper into a commitment? That was consistency. The crowd that swayed your judgment, not because they were right, but because they were many. That was social proof. None of these are tricks. They're reflections of how our brains are wired. And once you see them, in ads, in conversations, in relationships, you can't unsee them. You realize influence isn't always about manipulation. It's about understanding the hidden levers that move us. Now here's the real takeaway. You don't just spot influence, you can practice it, not to deceive, but to connect, to inspire action, to lead with clarity. So the next time you're in a negotiation, a presentation, or even a casual conversation, pause and ask yourself, which principle is at play here? Because chances are, one of them is shaping the outcome. And if today's video sparked something in you, don't forget to like it, share it with a friend, and subscribe our channel. because awareness spreads like influence itself. Thanks for being here. And more importantly, thanks for choosing growth over guesswork. Until next time, stay curious, stay influential.